The host of, or co-host of, The Politics of Everything, the staff writer at the New Republic, Alex Perrine.
Hi, Sam. How are you?
Good. Did you put everything that you have in your apartment behind you today?
Yes, I did. I gathered all of my belongings.
I was going to say,
and
like,
I placed them behind me today.
Maybe it's a new angle that you have with the camera.
I have a new camera, and it captures too much of my room.
But it looks good. It's a high quality camera. But it's like, there's a mic. There's a trophy. Did you win a trophy?
Is there a trophy back there?
What would you like? What do you look at? Like, what would you have won a trophy for?
I don't recall having won a trophy for anything.
I was going to say, you're looking pretty hard. I mean, you're implying that there would be a trophy there. All right, let's. Well, there was a couple of things. First off, let me note this. I think you were on the program, I don't know, what was it, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago?
Something like that.
And you had done, if I'm not mistaken, a podcast, I think earlier that week, or about sort of like this doomsday scenario for the election.
Mm-hmm.
And Bart Gellman, Jeffrey Toobin have written pieces that essentially outline what you guys had talked about, if I recall correctly, right? This notion of faithless electors, or electors who are hijacked, if you will, by Republican state legislators. And they did some Gellman, at the very least, I have only browsed the Toobin piece, but Gellman spoke to Republicans in Pennsylvania who are basically saying, well, we're not going to tell you who, but yeah, we've been talking about it.
Yeah. Right. It was
scary,
alarming. It was alarming to see that attached to people's names on the record.
I mean, on some level, if they're going to do this, right, they're going to have to, the way that they do it is going to be in the light of day.
Yeah.
And they're going to, by going on the record and talking about it, on some level, they're I don't want to say normalizing it, but they're
setting the groundwork, right?
They're setting the groundwork.
Yeah.
And they're saying, like, yeah, this is what we're talking about is not, something that you can't say out loud. This is part of the Constitution. So of course we can do this.
Yeah. And I was talking to my friend and coworker, Libby Watson, earlier. And, Jake Tapper did a tweet yesterday that was like, well, congressional Republicans are trying to send a message by signaling that they will send a message to the White House by signaling they will respect the results of the November 3rd election. And Libby was like, if they steal the election, it's not going to be Donald Trump goes on TV holding a Tommy gun saying, like, the election's off, we're calling off the election. Like, they're going to do it with lawyers. They're going to do it with state legislatures and lawyers.
Yes.
And it'll be by the book.
It's going to be by the book. Although I bet that if they need to push some time limits, that's where we see sort of like the Proud Boys come in.
Yeah.
Like, look, you have a certain number of days before those electors have to be chosen by the states, right? It's mid-December, essentially. If you, and you can get extensions and whatnot, but let's just call it mid-December for the sake of argument. If you can chew up 3 or 4 or 5 days in November with just like, oh, they've locked themselves to the doors, or they're keeping people out and they can't physically count the ballots and whatnot. All right, they go to jail for a couple of days or something like that. Maybe they don't. And they've bought 5 days. And then with delays in court cases and I mean, this is what went down in Florida on some level too.
Yeah.
You could see multiple of these.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's what is like the scary, but the scary, but realistic idea of what could go wrong is basically like, repeat of Florida in multiple places with like militias and Proud Boys taking the place of the Brooks Brothers riot.
Right. So, all right. How Well, let's just start with this, and I want to get to you. Wrote a piece about McConnell and Ginsburg, and in some ways, like that drama, if you will, or that narrative is parallel to the one that we're talking about, right? Which is there is a will to power.
Yeah.
With Donald Trump, when we talk about Donald Trump, when we talk about the Republicans, I mean, this is really important for people to understand this. And we can talk a little bit about how deep that understanding is, because I remember, I am so old that I remember when Paul Ryan was talking about how there was something fishy about all the ballots that were coming in from California in 2016, late, like they're counting them late because they've been mailed in, right? And he was saying there's something fishy here. This is an election they won, incidentally, or at least, were crowned the winner. And so, people should understand that what we're talking about here is a party, not just Donald Trump. He can't do this without the party enabling him. And in fact, not even enabling, like beyond midwifing. I mean, to stretch that metaphor, like impregnating him on some level is really their participation in this. But so getting back to this, how legit is this concern? Because I'm seeing trolls on the left and the right saying, calm down. This is, this this is there's this, I appreciate the disdain for West Wing, but I don't feel like we're in, this is not a West Wing reaction in my mind.
No, I mean, I don't know. I just tend to think that if it's close enough that stealing it is viable, they will go for it. And I don't really see why they wouldn't. I mean, right. I think if they see a lane where it looks like they'll be able to try it and it might work, I think they're just going to try it.
What happens if he wins that way? I mean, look, if he wins, I mean, let me put it this way. Is there a material difference between Donald Trump getting more votes than Joe Biden, or, getting within, let's say, 500,000 votes and winning the Electoral College like he did, more or less like in 2016? Is there a material difference between that and he wins because Pennsylvania decides, the Republicans there decide no, there is no election result, so we're just gonna have to choose, and we choose Trump.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Real difference in terms of what it says for our future.
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't know. You have to get into a lot depends on how the other party responds, I think. And I've been sort of wondering, we've been reading for a while now about stuff like the war game scenarios that people are doing, where they're trying to figure out how different groups would respond. And we saw Hillary Clinton telling Joe Biden, don't concede like Al Gore did. But I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine that the Democrats have begun planning for anything that doesn't just involve hiring election lawyers to argue before a Supreme Court that might be dominated by an additional conservative justice.
Right. Well, okay. I don't know if you're answering the question I'm asking. So a little bit clearer. Because I think, we can get to, what the Democrats are doing and what they can do. And I would agree with you. I think the delta there is probably too big for our purposes. But I'm saying 6 months from after the election.
Oh, yeah.
Donald Trump is inaugurated and he has won because the Pennsylvania Republicans, I don't know, whatever.
Or maybe it went to the House, and then the crazy House vote, which is the state, the states get a single vote, basically. I could see that. Yeah.
Right. And depending on who has won who has won the delegate numbers there. Mm-hmm. So in other words, Democrats control the House because California and New York have so many Congress people.
Yeah. But
And
that's not the way we talked to Michael Kazin about this on the podcast.
that's not the way it works when it goes to the House. Then all of a sudden it's like the Senate.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's so it's like the California delegation gets a vote, and
right.
the
And
Wyoming
the Wyoming delegation gets a vote.
gets
and that
vote,
so that's where the issue is. So, but let's say they win that way. Like in terms of what it means for the rest of for the country for like 4 years from now, does that make a material difference? Because let me say where I'm going with this. I think if Donald Trump becomes president again, because of stuff like this, because the Pennsylvania, they were able to sort of, prevent the actual elections from being the vote that is cast, because the states can pick their electors in any way they choose, really. Mm-hmm. And that's the way that Donald Trump becomes president. The idea, it's almost like, when you're committing a crime, if you get your buddies involved and they're all accomplices, their behavior after that takes place is going to change because they are tied to you, and it's almost like all bets are off.
Yeah.
As opposed to if he wins with just, he won the most electoral votes.
If he wins the same way he won last time, right?
Yeah. Then then there's room for people to be on the other side of him, even, within that party on some level. But the more people he gets involved in this sort of power grab, they've already chosen which side they're on, and they're going to do whatever they need to do to maintain that power.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been part of the scary thing about the way quote unquote normal Republicans have tied themselves to him so far, is that exactly when you breach some line of ethical conduct, like you're on the other side of it now. Like you've already said, I will go this far, and you sort of can't go back after that point. You say, this is what I have been willing to do to maintain power, and like obviously, like at that point, like what won't I do to maintain power?
Right, because you can't go back. That there could be some type of retribution. I mean, so what? All right. So I have been reading about the same thing that you have in terms of the they've assembled lawyers. I don't know how coordinated it is, frankly, but my understanding is that there's a lot of lawyers out there that the Democrats are assembling, a lot of different teams, et cetera, et cetera. I know there are things, and I want people to, I almost feel obligated every time I talk about this now, to remind people to go vote as early as possible.
Yeah.
In many states, you can vote in person right now.
I think voting early in person wherever you can is the best move in much of the country. If
you go to vote.org, early-voting-calendar, you can find out what the situation is in your state. Monitor, find out, tell your friends. Like, people keep writing me like, what can we do? You start there. And then the other thing that you can do is if you can be a poll watcher, Google, how do I become a poll watcher? And go do that, because supposedly the Republicans are sending out tens of thousands of poll watchers.
Yeah.
And I imagine they're going to be intimidating. You can also go to powerthepolls.org. Oh, that's how you can get to be a poll worker. Powerthepolls.org. And you can go to protectthevote.net for more information. We'll put these links there. So, I mean, because we have these conversations, people are like freaking out, as they should be, frankly. I think that's legit. And, I want to give them an opportunity is to like, here's something that you can do. What else do you think that Democrats could do besides the lawyers, though?
I mean, I don't know. That is the central question. I think, so there's, I don't know, it's like, what can Democrats do? Well, what can different Democrats do? I think the Biden campaign has said, basically, we think Trump is using this kind of talk to depress turnout. And I don't think that's true, but I think that's probably savvy enough for them to say. And they should just do what you just did and tell people to go vote in person early. Oh, I know they're still doing mail a lot. For me, it feels like there's going to be like Democrats are not the ones responsible for organizing mass demonstrations on the street, and so it will be a question of whether they discourage that or not. I feel like it's like a after it happens is the
Right.
real question.
How
And
much do they embrace it, and
yeah,
how much do they say,
how much do they
try
say
and
like
tamp it down?
everyone calm down? Because I think they have a real like considering the age of some of them, a genuine '60s hangover fear of being seen as being responsible for unrest that they will have to fight against, or they might not want to fight against it. But I think that too many of them, that still drives a lot of their behavior. But I don't know. It's like extremely hard to
Game this out.
yeah, to game it out and to say like, well, what does December and January look like? It's extremely hard to figure that out right now.
It hadn't occurred to me, but I think that is really that is one of the central questions is what will their response be? I mean, and will they help grow it? I mean, I'm just trying to think like, what was going on with Occupy.
Yeah,
It took a while, but ultimately, like they all just sort of like, yeah, they were semi encouraging of it,
yeah,
semi,
yeah.
um, and then not so much, but
But I think their attitude towards mass demonstration and activism now is kind of summed up in the women's march stuff, where they actively encouraged it and then like sort of like wanted it to be demobilized while they went back to their regular work of
right.
like passing message bills.